Hello everybody and welcome back to the 17th episode of Tides of Lore. My name is Robert Silva and I am one half of your host team, joined today as always by my good friend Tim. How are we doing today, Tim?
Oh, it's a beautiful day, man. Went hiking, having a great time out here, man. 67 degrees. Spring is here, man. I love it. I've been playing some Monster Hunter. I don't know how taboo it is to talk about other games, but I love
I've been doing it.
I love Monster Hunter, dude. And this new one, people are talking crap, but dude, it's so much fun. It's so much fun.
We kind of talked about this off camera, but I feel like it's one of those games, like, as long as the gameplay is good, like, the story could be incredibly just okay. And as long as they got those food animations in there, which I have seen.
Yeah, well, I liked World's food animation better because you'd, like, go to the canteen and, like, cats would make it for you. Now, you fucking have a portable... I'm not even gonna call it a grill. They call it a grill. It's a portable flame, and you have your plate with you, and you just make it you and your one cat. But it's not like a team of cats making it. So I think they've done better in previous games in that sense.
That is disappointing. I do want my one-eyed cat shift.
Exactly.
Very gently placing the last piece of parsley on there.
Now that might change. I hear they're maybe making a cantina or canteen, whatever it's called. But at the moment, no. You're just making it like a makeshift little grill. So
it still looks amazing. The animations that
it does.
Into that, so good.
It does. And the gameplay is so much fun. So I'm having a blast doing that. What have you been doing?
I've been doing a lot of legacy raids still, trying to get my fucking mounts. I've ran Tomb of Sargeras about 180 times for the Abyss Worm and still cannot get that thing. I've ran the opening of the Antorus raid about 180 times and I still can't get that, but I did also do some Undermine content. I was considering trying to get into a normal raid so that I could unlock the reputation that you can only get after you've beaten Gallywix.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, there's this reputation that you can only unlock once you've beaten the final raid boss in there, and from there then you can go dig more trash to grind that rep, which I did anyeanyway.
Hey, you're leaving out, you got a mount. Come on now.
I got 2 mounts.
Exactly.
Yeah,
What'd you get?
And Bub got a mount too.
What'd you get?
I can't remember the names of them off the top of my head, but the mount for killing the rare that comes out of the trash piles and Undermined, and also on my first try I did get the mount that you can get from the loot boxes in there.
First try.
I've been seeing some people. First try. It's a 1 in 20, but still, considering that some of those Argus mounts are a 1 in 20 as well, and I had to run those like 50 times. Maybe my luck's really turning around. Yeah, we also got one for our friend, because a bunch of people were getting that mount dropping, and they were like, roll for it. So we rolled for it and got Bub the mount as well.
Oh, so he got it traded to him. Nice.
Yes, sir.
That's cool. That's cool.
But yeah, mostly that's what I've been up to. Been working on Tides of Lore, obviously. And things have been going quite good this week, especially. We've gotten up to 220 subscribers.
Let's
were
go.
At 200 the last time we spoke, so...
Yo, if you're listening and you like the content, give it a like, give it a subscribe. It helps, guys.
It does, and we are making that grind all the way up to whatever we're looking for. I'm happy with our 200, but yeah, the more the better. You're all welcome.
It seems like we're gonna keep going until we run out of lore. And since we're starting behind, will we ever run out of lore? I don't know. So.
I think that's a question for a later time of what exactly we're going to do with the lore, because we will eventually run out, and this is probably going to be our last episode for the classic version of World of Warcraft, but I feel like the lore only kind of duplicates and multiplies in its intensity and descriptions and depth the further you go down, even if it's maybe not as enjoyable, if you want to say that. I still love a lot of it, and then the more I've been reading up on the lore, I'm like, Cataclysm actually did have good stories. I hated the gameplay, but Cataclysm did have some good stories.
Well, you'll have to teach me, because I don't know if I remember.
I will. Yes, I will. But yeah, that's what I've been up to. And last episode, we spoke about the Trolls, our friend Bub's favorite faction in all of Warcraft. What do you remember about that episode, Tim?
The Trolls, they're coming to being from the Well of Eternity. A lot of things come from the Well of Eternity, right? Talked about their Loas, They're like what they worship. That's like their gods that they worship. We talked about the Zandalar. They're a very big... I would say they have a lot of history for the trolls. They're probably one of the biggest... do you think one of the biggest empires? Or one of the greatest?
Like, definitely one of the greatest. It is... I would say they're actually one of the smaller... On the smaller side, just because, like, their territory doesn't expand as far. But they are... what a lot of, I guess, the history would consider like the origins of these other empires too.
I feel like their Loa is like working with them very closely. Well, I don't see that all the time from other trolls.
Yeah, it is also because they like literally live in a mountain range with the other Loas and stuff like that. So it kind of makes sense that they are more stay blessed, you know?
Talked about them fighting the Kyr, and they actually beat them, which is crazy. I think it dented them pretty hard, but they beat the Kyr. What about, the Gurabashi we talked about as well, too.
Saw Xal'atath, her black blade form for the first time during that episode. And like I mentioned then, we'll definitely be seeing more of her as we move down this lore line.
Ooh, and then the Night Elves and them coming about, and they had a pretty big conflict, did they not? Oh,
they were just they had a superiority complex over everybody. But yeah, specifically being the trolls that were the current reigning empire, they fucked them up. We also talked about Hakar, the Soul Flare, kind of the first of these major Loa that we know of that are kind of complete dickheads.
Yes, we fought him. I remember he like sucks your blood out. Yeah, he's the blood Loa, or what is he?
Yeah, he's what they call the blood god, and it does seem like he is like the Loa of blood. And I mean, hell, even in the original version of World of Warcraft, he created a genuine plague for the world that was never supposed to come out of his raid.
I think people studied that and compared it to like real world plagues.
Yeah, no, they had actual scientists studying that event to understand how plagues spread and how humans react to it specifically. So
that's funny.
But yeah, that was most of what we talked about. We talked a little bit about how the Dark Spear end up like splintering off from the Gurubashi as well and becoming their own little faction that meet up with Thrall's Horde and eventually join up with the Horde in the Echo Isles and Durotar and stuff like that. Vol'jin and his buddy Zalazane, and we didn't really talk about their falling out, but we kill him. But he's dead. And
he killed me in hardcore, I'm pretty sure. He's surrounded by a lot of mean men at that level.
Like I said, dude, he'll shrink you and just like cut all your stats in half. Early game, bro, having 0 stats, you're just like, I guess I'll just stand here as you pummel me unconscious. Yeah. But yeah, that is what we spoke about last episode. We did also have a few comments from our previous episodes coming from the final half of Varian's story, or rather the stories that we told with Deathwing, as well as some of our shorts, and we're just going to hop into some of those right now. We did have Luke Len Bias 3964 saying, I was praying that there would be a 50 DKP minus joke somewhere in here, and you did not disappoint in response to our final Varian episode. And of course, I mean, I told him like we were really trying to give some of the history of the actual game alongside of the lore that it comes from, so it felt necessary. After seeing Anduin get thrown in that pit, I was like, we got to. He's losing DKP.
Dude, it's an iconic video. That, Leroy Jenkins, like there's certain videos if you play WoW, right? 4 strength, 4 stam, leather belt, level 18. Yeah. Like there's certain things you just have to, they're pop culture references at this point, right?
Yeah, dude, when we very first got into Classic in 2019, every single time I got an upgrade, I just could not stop hearing that in my head. We did also have Bubba BSE saying, Sourfang mentioned, also a troll episode incoming? Oh yeah, man, we be eating good. And that is the same Bubba who we love to see and speak with pretty regularly. So happy that he's going to now get his troll episode that's going to be releasing tomorrow.
He does roleplay as a troll, I will say. I've seen him.
He's currently founding a full troll guild on the Emerald Dream server.
He's forming one or he's in one?
Oh, he's already made it, but he's trying to build up the Empire of Zul once again. And
is that what it's called, Empire of Zul?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I gave him the name. I was like, this is when all the trolls united together. So if you make it this, it'll be lore accurate too.
Wow.
But also we did have Gandor 1853 on our short that we most recently released about how the Ashbringer was created, which is a good bit back in the actual episodes that we released, but I did want to cover it because he does kind of ask what I think is an interesting question. He just says, so correct me if I'm wrong, but wouldn't the corrupted Ashbringer, as we know it, be the original Ashbringer, while the light orb variant is the corrupted version? Since the silver hand corrupted it with light to even be able to use it, the orb was altered. And he says, do we know anything about the orb itself? It would be interesting to know where it originated from and what state the original was intended to be. And I did talk with him. We did also kind of discuss in that episode in more detail than the short could show, just like our theories about how the orb like could be just kind of used for whatever purpose that the wielder kind of goes for. So,
yeah.
You know, a void orb in the start, a light orb when it becomes the Ashbringer, and then, you know, a necromantic weapon after the betrayal of the betrayal of Alexandros.
It seems to absorb whatever energy is emanating at the time, and then it will transform regarding that energy. So, like, yeah, it could be. I think it could be pretty much anything. You know, if you give it, you know, fire energy, you can turn it into a fire weapon or whatever.
And I did kind of talk with him a little bit more because he's like, do we have any more info on the orb? And like I did mention to you, we don't really have much info on the orb. It is also kind of odd because it does seem like the weapon itself is a bit more sentient than maybe just being a tool, because later down in the story, the Ashbringer, even while corrupted, will refuse to strike down champions of the light.
Well, we also got the orb from just a no-name guy. So, like, are there more orbs? Can we make more weapons with this, right? There's a lot of questions I had as well.
So I did look into this a little bit further, and I did have these notes for the last time for when we did speak about it, but it was told by the author of these comics, of the Ashbringer comics. The writer stated that he had intended to eventually reveal that the orb was the heart of a corrupted Naru. So the same sort of thing that Velen uses to purify the Sunwell when you do that raid. And while that never seemed to actually make it to the game, I think that would make a lot of sense, especially because in like Warlords of Draenor, you do see Velen using the light to purify the Darkstar in the Shadowmoon Valley, which is a fully corrupted void Naru.
That's very interesting because, yes, Narus, they wax and wane. Like, so a corrupted Naru will become a light Naru. A light Naru will become a void Naru. So we obviously seen the light part of the Ashbringer. But the corrupted part, I feel like it should be void, and it seems more of death or something, in my opinion.
But I guess that could open the door. I mean, if they ever did want to fully canonize that in the game, I guess that could open up the door for, you know, Naru being able to be susceptible to other things, including, like, you know, perhaps Fel, perhaps whatever, or necromancy. And I don't know how interested I am in seeing that. I'm kind of done with Naru following Legion, but we might see it, especially with the light really taking another.
I think we're going to see void ones. Yeah, for sure.
But that is all of the comments that we had for last week, and we are going to be moving into this week's episode. Kind of, like I said, probably going to be the last episode of the classic version of Warcraft, where we do talk about the final raid of AQ40 Ahn'Qiraj. And the man that kind of leads the way into all of that, Fandral Staghelm.
I hate him.
Before we dive into today's story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to Tides of Lore on YouTube, or if you're on Spotify, leave us a 5-star rating. It really helps the channel and ensures you won't miss a moment of this adventure. Now let's get started. And I guess we'll just start right there. Fandral Staghelm, my God, I cannot think of a bigger fuck up in the entire story of World of Warcraft. Like, Illidan's done some short-sighted, stupid-ass things, but in the end, he's kind of been proven to be a very useful ally and a very useful, you know, character in the story. But Fandral Staghelm manages, through his entire career, of everything that we know about him, to just be a total shithead and do nothing, seemingly, than just constantly fuck up. So let's get into that. So Fandral Staghelm was a druid, an archdruid at that too, meaning that he is basically one of the full, like, most powerful druids that existed. And he was actually there when they founded the Cenarian Circle, which we did briefly mention was the event that Malfurion Stormrage kind of brought all of these druids together in the Moonglade to kind of establish what they think a druid should be, and, you know, don't become fucking crazed worgen creatures and, you know, take care of the earth and all that. So he was one of these establishing members. He was even there when Belisra Starbreeze brings the Scythe of Elune to Malfurion to give it to him and have him lock away R'hllor Fangfire, the man that would eventually kind of go on to be the Alpha Prime leader of the Worgen. And even in that story, he is a shithead, because, like, Belisra's like, look, I brought you this legendary artifact. I need you to stop my old friend. And he's like, seize her! Prison! And he is just so short-sighted and an absolute buffoon until Malfurion's just like, calm down. We do need this weapon. Perhaps it's, you know, not a good idea to constantly be a shithead all the time.
Burn it!
But yeah, you guys probably tell, especially as a Night Elf Druid player, I cannot get behind Fandral in any way. And the fact that it feels like he is just consistently falling upwards through his entire lifespan, I'm just like, how?
I'm surprised he's not the one who burned Teldrassil.
He kind of does something worse, and we're actually just going to kind of get into that. So Fandral, just so that we can establish it, Fandral doesn't really have any family left. By the time that we encounter his story, which is like 4,500 years before the opening of the Dark Portal, he has his son, Valston, and Valston has his wife, but Fandral's wife died while delivering his son, so there is pretty much no one left of his legacy. So he's really protective over his son. And while he's, like I said, an absolute shithead at all times, even towards his son, he does love him a lot. And that will be one of those things that causes him to kind of fall upwards. And we'll talk about that when we talk more about the War of the Shifting Sands. But after he does join with Malfurion and found the Cenarian Circle following the Worgen, he also does his first major fuck-up, where he takes 6 branches of the tree Nordrassil, which was the very first world tree that sits atop Mount Hyjal. And seeing that there is these deposits of serenite, which we mentioned was the blood of the old god Yogg-Saron, spreading across all of the world, not even just Northrend at this point, all of the world, he would take 6 of these branches and go and plant these trees on top of the serenite deposits, the biggest of them being in the Grizzly Hills in Northrend. But
so there was serenite was this just in Northrend, or was this all over the world?
No, it was all over the world. So
serenite is all over the world?
It was at this time. And I will say that at the very least, his plan did work. The downside to his plan is that he didn't tell anyone else about it and did it without the permission of the rest of the druids. So it was a bit of a short-sighted endeavor, but it does create what we know as the Great Trees. And the Great Trees are still in World of Warcraft. You actually see them in Feralis. You see them in the Hinterlands. You see them in all across the world. There are all those areas where you can see the portals that lead into the Emerald Dream that in WoW have like the green dragons guarding them at this point.
That's what I was going to say. Aren't there world boss dragons in front of them?
Yep. And the reason that those are world bosses, so, and just before we do get into that, so he basically uses the Emerald Dream's power to purify the Serenite's taint of these areas. And like I said, the most major one being the new world tree that was formed in the Grizzly Hills that they call Teldrassil. And while it did work, while it did stop the Serenite, which I guess is a dub, there do begin to get these reports from Northrend that the races that are typically pretty docile and pretty cool guys up there by the Tonka and the forest nymphs are going into bouts of violent, chaotic rage and just bloodlust against each other. And they're like, wow, I could not foresee why this could possibly be happening. And they do look into it, and they realize that this world tree that was planted in Northrend had its roots reach all the way down into Azeroth until it actually makes contact with the prison that Yogg-Saron was living in. And then through this, he is now able to spread his influence not just through his blood, but into this sacred alternate realm of the Emerald Dream. And it begins to let the old gods influence this place and what creates the zone area, this portion of the Emerald Dream that we will just know as the Emerald Nightmare. So to just keep it really simple, I mean, think the Emerald Dream where it's all peachy happy and naturey, except not that. Terrifying, thorny, and violent and scary.
I have a question about Fandral. Did he specifically choose Serenite? Like, to plant it on top of Serenite? And what was his theory to cause chaos? Or, like, why did he do that?
He did it to purify, because I guess the Serenite would be destroying the land around it, kind of like how the land around Icecrown seems like complete barren, even though, I mean, it's also Icecrown. But it still seems like drained of life and dangerous to be around. So his intention was to save the world from this corruption. It just, again, he didn't seem to understand that, man, perhaps this will corrupt something else. Like, you buffoon.
So he doesn't have the best critical thinking skills. He's very unlikable.
I hate this man. But yes. So they realize now that Teldrassil is completely compromised by Yogg-Saron's corruption. I don't know if they know who Yogg-Saron is yet. I don't think they've been into the Titan facility of Ulduar, and they're like, wow, yeah, that's him. But yeah, the old god is now influencing the Emerald Dream. So druids, being the guardian of the Emerald Dream, have now been the ones to fuck it up, which is something we did kind of talk with our comment section about earlier. But they do decide that if Teldrassil stays standing, that the Emerald Dream will begin to make its way into the real world as well. Or the Emerald Nightmare, rather. And, well, that's bad. So the other druids, including Malfurion, find out about this, and they're like, all right, well, we only really have one option, so we're gonna destroy Teldrassil. And that is where they topple this magnificent infected world tree that is then renamed to Teldrassil, the Broken Crown. And it's what most of the zone of the Grizzly Hills is. That's why it has that giant tree that's spread all across it that the Grizzlemaw will eventually take over. And that was once a world tree, the same way that Nordrassil, the same way that Teldrassil were world trees. So, while Yogg-Saron was kind of the first one to spread the seed into the Emerald Dream and create the Emerald Nightmare, there was also, it does make it clear that all of the old gods that exist are able to enter this realm, because the one that then goes on to really kind of push the corruption around and do all sorts of shit was N'Zoth, the one that is still trapped under the sea at the time and nowhere near this tree. And this does have a lot of effects, even effects that we can see in classic World of Warcraft. For example, there is the Night Elf Druid Gnarlex, who you can find in the Barrens inside of the Wailing Caverns. And his whole goal inside these Wailing Caverns was to try and study its connection to the Emerald Dream. And that's why inside the Wailing Caverns is so full of life and stuff like that. But yeah, the Nightmare transforms all of his other druids into druids of the Fang. He's actually the one, if you do the quest, he's the guy that's sleeping and you have to protect him while the guys come at you. So, that's what's going on there. Eventually you do save him and help him to get out of there, but it does seem like part of the reason that all of the creatures are so hostile and so crazy inside the Wailing Caverns is because that's part of where the Emerald Nightmare is leaking into the world.
Do you know what's up with that Murloc at the end?
I don't even know if that thing's technically canon, but I don't.
Okay.
I guess maybe we'll do a Murloc episode.
Hey. There you go.
Yes, sir. And then, like I said, there is also the green dragons. For example, there is Ahn'Qiraj, who you'll find inside the Sunken Temple, who is a green dragon connected to the dream, corrupted by the nightmare. There's also Lethon, Emrys, Terrar, and Ysandra, who are also these once guardians of these trees that have been corrupted by the Emerald Nightmare. And we'll get into those in just one second, but there is also, we do get an indication that the Ogre Warlord after the Second War by the name of Gordok, who is the leader of the Gorduni ogres, the ones that end up living in the Night Elfin ruins of Dire Maul, the reason they also kind of become so crazy is because he has the whispers of the Emerald Nightmare going through his head and telling him yeah, you should just violently kill everybody. Just everybody. And he's like, yeah, Yeah.
Let's do that.
I agree. So, yeah, that's part of the reason why the Horde still go in there and they fight with them as well. I mean, obviously, it doesn't seem like we have the best relationship with the ogres as Horde still, but that is kind of why they're the worst. And to get back to, and just to make it clear, that zone also has one of those great trees, like we mentioned, that leads into the Emerald Dream, so it seems like that's where it's leaking out from.
Are all the trees corrupted then?
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't seem like the same degree like the World Tree was, because we don't go chopping them down. But they are leaking out Emerald Nightmare stuff, at least until the Emerald Nightmare is eventually dealt with to a degree, right? But that does bring us back to those loyal lieutenants. Lethon, who was the one that will emerge in the Duskwood portal in the Twilight Grove area of classic World of Warcraft. You'll part of this big, long quest chain at the end of the game for the Ahn'Qiraj, a Scepter of the Shifting Sands questline will have you go and face pretty much all these dragons. And he seems to have not only been corrupted by the nightmare, but he also has these void powers where as you're fighting him, he'll summon shadow variants of yourself and they'll help to heal him and fuck you up. And it does kind of all have its own little story weaved into it for each of these dragons, it feels like. So we do handle him, though it does seem like they don't actually die because they do appear in the Emerald Nightmare raid when you go do that eventually in Legion. But there is also Emrys, the one that appears in Ashenvale and has this plague of decaying horrors that it'll unleash upon all of the people and summon poisonous mushrooms into the world to fight off the heroes that eventually will come to face it. And Terrar, who is in Feralis, that will create these shadow forms of itself that are incorporeal and like just fragments of a shattered dragon. And lastly, Ysander, who appears in the Hinterlands, who it doesn't give too much of a reason why this one's like entirely corrupted, but she just seems to have like these arcane storms that kind of constantly rage around her and stuff like that. And yeah, that is why those world bosses exist. They are former guardians of the Emerald Dream that have been corrupted by the Emerald Nightmare come classic World of Warcraft.
You gotta thank Fandral for the extra loot then, right?
No, I don't.
I mean, if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have these dragons to kill to get some extra loot.
I suppose so.
I'm kidding.
So, that is the first time that he fucks up. The next time that he fucks up is when, about 900 years before the Dark Portal opens, you do have him and his son going into the desert of Silithus, looking to create a nice lush land instead of it being this brutal, harsh desert. Because, I mean, I guess to some degree, he's still a druid and he still wants that for the world. You fucking idiot. But he reaches a point where they come across this old fortress and they're like, damn, I didn't even know this fortress was here. It's not even on the map. Hey, son, go inside and check that out and let me know what you find. So he sends his son, Valston, into this place, and it is all shadowy and imposing and creepy, and on the inside, he wakes up the Ahn'Qiraj, which are also the descendants into what we will know as the Silithids. And the Silithids, kind of sensing his presence, they wake up and they begin to attack his people. They begin to kind of rouse the old god Cthulhu, who is inside of this place, because this is a place known as Ahn'Qiraj, a former Titan facility meant to imprison this old god.
Wow, so...
Just read a history book, guys.
Another L for Fandral. So, did the trolls not beat the Ahn'Qiraj? Or there's just different factions of them, so they didn't beat this faction.
It doesn't seem like they were able to completely kill off this faction. All we got from this info is that they managed to push this specific faction into this area of Ahn'Qiraj. I guess they just didn't go all the way in and finish the fight.
Why not finish the job? Why not finish? Not enough numbers? I mean, it's just like, I guess they're not really still an issue, right? I guess we did go in, we killed... Was it Cthulhu?
Yep.
So I guess it's not really an issue anymore.
Well, it is for them at least, and up until Classic, yeah, it still is, because, like I said, the Qiraji wake up, they're kind of the leaders, the generals and the lieutenants of the Silithid army, and they through this begin to create just a massive force of these Qiraji forces inside of Ahn'Qiraj. And it also is revealed that the stone constructs, I'm beginning to think that the Titans genuinely didn't know what the fuck they were doing, because a bunch of these Titan Forge that were in there called the Anubisith are these like pharaoh looking Titan Forge that you'll see when you go into the area, and they're also corrupted by the old gods.
Who would have thought?
And they who would have thought? I guess it is also stated that when the Sundering happened, that it did weaken a lot of these prisons that the old gods had been contained in before. So maybe that's why they're actually able to start getting out and spreading their corruption once again.
So these aren't Titan constructs.
But they are. Titan Forged.
So, okay, I thought they worked for the Qiraji.
They do. Now.
Okay.
They were originally there just as like guards, and then they're like, hey man, the old gods kind of got some good ideas, don't you agree? And they're like, I agree.
Yes.
Yeah. So that is also what's there. And now the Qiraji with all of these forces just begin to pour into Silithus out of Ahn'Qiraj, and they take over every canyon, every dune ravine in Silithus, and just begin to build these massive hives like you'll find in the modern game, or well, the classic version of the game at this point. And this is what begins to rally the Night Elves, because they're like, well, can't have that. This is our continent. So Fandral sends out an SOS, begins to assemble a bunch of these Kaldori forces, the Sentinels, the Priestesses of Elune, and the Keepers of the Grove, to go fight against the Qiraji in Silithus. And this is what begins the event known as the War of the Shifting Sands. And it is just, I mean, it's kind of a short segment in the actual chronicle itself, but it does go into a lot of detail, or it doesn't go into a lot of detail about exactly how these fights go. You just see that it says the Kaldori managed to win and push them back, and then the Qiraji will overwhelm them and push them back, and it's just kind of this push and tug of back and forth between the two enemies. And eventually Fandral tells his son, who did manage to survive the waking of the Qiraji, like, go defend this one base and hold that there, and it'll be up to you to keep that spot held. And it's called Southwind Village. And eventually, I guess the Qiraji, being fairly intelligent, are like, you know what would probably break the will of their commander? If we kill his son.
True.
So they overwhelm the Southwind Village, and they kill everybody, but they don't kill Valston. And then when, like, and this is just as the Night Elves think that they're about to be able to win this and claim victory over the Qiraji and push them back into Qiraj and do whatever, right? And then one of these Qiraji by the name of General Rajix, Rajaxx, they're always such weird names, but yes, him, then brings the wounded Valston to the front lines for Fandral and all of the Kaldori forces to see. And he basically holds him up and is just like, this is what, fighting against us gets. And he tears him in half in front of Fandral. And like I said, they're a bit more intelligent than maybe we give them credit for, because this shatters Fandral's will to fight, basically. And with their leader kind of apathetic and struggling to fight, a lot of the other Kaldori forces begin to lose ground against them. And that is when Fandral, kind of seeing that he's probably going to lose this conflict if he doesn't get help, goes to the Caverns of Time, which is an area in the zone right next to Silithus called Tanaris. And in Tanaris, the Caverns of Time are where the bronze dragonflights hang out. And he's like, look, guys, this is a big problem. You got to come help with us. And the bronze dragons are kind of just like, nah, we're all right. This is, below us at first. And Fandral's like, well, fuck.
I mean, I wouldn't want to work for Fandral either.
Thank you for tuning in to Tides of Lore. If you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your fellow adventurers. Your support makes all the difference. Thank you.
The bronze dragons are just like, nah, that's your guys' problem. We'll handle our own shit. But after the Kaldori do get pushed out of Silithus and do get pushed out of Tanaris, the Qiraji are like, this is our land. The Black Empire will rise once again. And they go and they attack the Caverns of Time. And obviously, this is a bad idea, because if you guys could barely handle the night elves, you don't even know what's coming when you fight the dragons. So the dragons then realize, actually, we probably should do this. We should join up with these people to help fight the Qiraji threat. And not only do the bronze dragons join the war, they call up Malygos, they call up Ahn'Qiraj and Ysera, and they're like, hey guys, war in South Kalimdor, let's get to it. So all the dragons show up to then help this fight, and it just drastically shifts how the war is going for them. There is like really, like, they're under command of one of these main bronze dragons by the name of Ahn'Qiraj, and the Qiraji can't really do anything against dragons. They have the ability to fly, but they're not like as magically gifted. They're not as resilient as the dragons, and the dragons can just slay thousands of them at a time, and just, dragon's breath, boom, your entire army is gone. And there's like really only, as they're pushing all of these Qiraji back towards Ahn'Qiraj, there is really only like one story that we even get of them actually being able to slay one of these dragons. There's a bronze dragon by the name of Grakarond, not Galakron, but Grakarond, something like that. And as it's flying over, one of these Anubiseth, those pharaoh-looking dudes, manages to clip its wing with its weapon, and it just goes crashing into the ground. And it even says, as it crashed into the ground, it just smashes thousands of these like Qiraji as it like crash lands on top of their bodies as well.
Even when it's
but
dying,
regardless,
it's taking out out more.
Exactly. And they obviously swarm it. They do manage to kill this bronze dragon, and it kind of becomes a holy site for the Anubiseth and the Qiraji as they rip this dragon to shreds, kind of being like a sacred ground for them, basically a sign of their ability to defeat any enemy. A bit foolish, because they really, like I said, this is like their only W against the dragons, but the night elves and the dragons manage to completely overwhelm them in this warfare now. And that is where they push them into the area of Silithus pretty much exclusively. And they're just like, okay, let's come up with a good plan to make sure that these guys just stay here. So that is when they create this magical scepter known as the Scepter of the Shifting Sands.
Oh.
And
the same one for opening the gates.
And that is also what creates the gates, because using their magic all combined together, they form what is called the Scarab Wall, which is just this massive magical and physical barrier that seals off Ahn'Qiraj from the rest of the world and keeps them all completely contained in there. And yeah, that is where they kind of just stay. The Cthulhu's just like, well, another L. What's new? What's another 1,000 years? Mm-hmm. So he's forming up his army of Qiraji in there, the old god Cthulhu, and he's beginning to continue to plot that one day I'll be out of here again. And they take the Scepter of the Shifting Sands, and as this event kind of grows further and further into the past, into closer what we would be at actual classic World of Warcraft, they begin to just kind of separate the pieces of the scepter to ideally never open the door again. And that is why, as you do have the Scepter of the Shifting Sands being broken into so many pieces and being such a long quest chain when you do actually do it in the game, where you have to go all across the world and give it to, like, encounter all these different dragons, like fucking Valistraz in the Upper Blackrock Spire. He has one of the pieces that you need for this event. And like we said, some of these green dragons and stuff like that. And also the dragon Ahn'Qiraj creates the Scarab Gong, which is essentially the only way to undo the magical barrier of the Scarab Wall. And it's time for Fandral to fall upward a bit more, because following the destruction of Teldrassil after the Third War, there is Fandral being like, we need another world tree because we deserve to be immortal. And I know what'll get us to be immortal again. I'm going to take, I guess, part of Teldrassil, and I'm going to plant us a new world tree. We're going to place it off the coast of Kalimdor, and it's going to form our new world tree of Teldrassil. So he does this. And something I do find a bit interesting is that it seems like Teldrassil grows to its full height that we actually see it in game in like 4 years, because there's not a very big gap between Warcraft 3 and World of Warcraft. It's like a 4-year span. So it goes from apparently being a tiny little sapling to being a city-sized tree in that short amount of time. But unlike...
Gave it some steroids. That's crazy how fast it...
Here's some fertilizer. You got this.
GMOs or something, I think.
So yeah, he with this group called the Circle of the Ancients plant this world tree, and it grows and it grows. I don't know if they, again, Fandral just never opened up a history book or what, but the reason that they were even immortal with Nordrassil was because the bronze dragon Norsdomu blessed the tree that they would never age as long as the tree stood. And Norsdomu sees this world tree and he's like, y'all are fucking mad ignorant. Like, what are you, like, not even ignorant. You guys are so vain and so egotistical. Why would I bless your tree again? And they're just like, what the fuck? So this tree is grown, but it does not grant them immortality because Norsdomu doesn't want to.
Interesting. He said, y'all got me fucked up.
For real. And yeah, so this tree grows. And as it does, there is also that the tree itself seems to be slightly polluted with that juicy emerald nightmare stuff that's going on, right? So, god damn it, Fandral. So a lot of the species that do grow on this tree or do live on this tree turn into corrupted furbolgs and turn into satyrs and turn into things that are corrupted by the Emerald Nightmare, which is why a lot of the Night Elves move out of that city into the area of Darkshore, which is nearby, to escape this fouled waters and this buffoonery going on with Fandral. And honestly, I can't believe that Illidan gets fucking exiled for creating a second Well of Eternity, while Fandral, again, just falling upwards continually.
It was because Malfurion was his brother.
And Malfurion, that's a good point. Malfurion goes into the Emerald Dream. And like we mentioned at the reveal of Classic, he can't seem to wake up. And it's actually revealed that that is because, and you'll find this in one of the later quest chains that you can do for Fandral Staghelm in Classic, to go to the Ungoro crater and collect a herb called marrow grain. And it doesn't really make it clear what it's doing at that time, but it does seem to indicate in the lore that Fandral is actually using marrow grain to keep Malfurion stuck in the Emerald Dream, to keep his soul kind of severed from his body and lost. And so I guess that he can remain the leader now of the Cenarian Circle and the Druids. And we kind of help him do that, you know, unbeknowingly. Though there are certain of these Night Elf Druids, and one by the name of Quintus Jonespire, who exists in the Feathermoon Stronghold in Feralis, who's like, yeah, I'll be honest with you, I think Fandral's a dipshit.
Aced take.
So he's like, yeah, I suspect he's doing dark rituals to keep Malfurion stuck there. And the druids that exist in the Moonglade, like Remulos, the son of Cenarius, is like, yeah, I think Fandral's a dipshit. And there's Tyrande, who obviously is married to Malfurion or whatever their culture has for that. And she's like, yeah, I think Fandral's a dipshit.
Is Fandral the one you get the Morgraine for? So is he the guy behind the tree? That's Fandral.
Yep. And along with this, Fandral is like, yeah, guys, I hear there's a bunch of trolls in this area of Alterac Valley, and we should kill them because they're speaking blasphemy that they could potentially be where the Night Elves come from. And that's an absolutely stupid take. How could that be true? I mean, we talked about this last episode. This is absolutely true. The Night Elves do come from trolls. So he is literally waging war on the trolls for the again, read a fucking history book, dude.
I don't know. Do Night Elves ever really acknowledge that?
I don't know. I also think we might see it. Like, I don't know if you know the like dark trolls that we kind of see in the War Within trailer, the ones that exist deep within.
Yeah.
We haven't really encountered them yet. We've encountered like one or two of them in Ahn'Qiraj in the War Within.
You haven't,
but
there was quests that you had to do recently. I feel like, and to get to the Undermine, you dealt with them more.
You do, It's just that, like, their whole purpose is still really unclear. But my theory for that is that these are kind of, because if you look at them, they look very troll-like, right? They got tusks, they got long pointy ears, but they also have 5 fingers. They also have, less super long pointy ears than the trolls. And my theory is that they are kind of what the dark trolls originally were a lot more like, because we do see dark trolls, but I think this is kind of what would essentially be the missing link between trolls and night elves, where they are, they have features that are very similar to being troll-like, with the tusks, and they have like 4 toes instead of 3 toes, but they still have like that little back stump like trolls do on the back of their ankle. And their whole purpose is to defend what is these like grand world tree roots underneath the ground, which we don't have too much info on, but we'll talk about a lot more when we get there. I have theories that it's the world tree that was originally ripped out by Unthul during the ordering of Azeroth, because it did say that the roots survived that event. And all of this is probably not going to make sense if you don't play World of Warcraft, but I do think that is coming to the story at some point. I can see that, man. Well, it's theorized that the Un'Goro crater, because the Un'Goro crater is full of life and stuff like that, doesn't have any Titan facilities that we know of.
What?
But
it's surrounded by them.
Well, kind of. But like the crater itself doesn't. And it's not like Sholazar Basin where it's got like these towers of Titan facilities all around it, right? But it's still overflowing with life. And when that tree was originally ripped out, it was planted by Ahn'Qiraj, the Lifebinder, the one that gives Alexstrasza her power to bring life to everything. And he's like, Aman'Thul's like, this is too chaotic, get it out of here. But also when you go into the Emerald Nightmare raid and you fight Il'gynoth in the Emerald Nightmare raid, you're in the Un'Goro crater, and in this alternate realm with the Emerald Nightmare, there is a corrupted world tree in Un'Goro. So it seems to maybe line up that the Un'Goro crater was created by ripping this tree out.
Oh, that's cool.
But yeah, we'll talk about that more later. That's just me kind of shooting the shit and thinking about what could possibly exist with these trolls and what they're defending and whatever. And we'll get more of that as they actually move into the story for these figures, instead of me digging through the trash in the Undermine. So that brings us to classic World of Warcraft, where Cho'Gall is kind of just like, hey, guys, me and my cultists of the Twilight's Hammer, we should free Cthulhu, because he's a really cool guy, and we love bringing the Hour of Twilight upon us. And yeah, so they kind of go there. They begin to pour their dark energies into the fortress of the Scarab Wall and Ahn'Qiraj, and these Silithids begin to get out of there, and they begin to start to pour out into the zones next to it, like Tanaris, like Feralis and stuff like that. And he rouses it doesn't really give us any information. We also don't know if this is entirely canon, because it comes from that portion of the comics that kind of got retconned. I thought I'd mention it just because it does seem like it could still fit. And he wakes up Cthulhu, and he's like, Cthulhu, buddy, it's time to run it back. And they kill a bunch of his dudes. They kill like pretty much all of his little Hour of Twilight cultists. And he's just like, this is great. I love this. But now the Qiraji, the Silithid, are once again pouring out of Ahn'Qiraj. And Cthulhu has been roused. And now there is the Cenarian Circle, still led by fucking Fandral, who is calling for help from everybody across Kalimdor. And that is where the Lord Regent of Stormwind, who is currently ruling at this time, Bolvar Fordragon, in place of Anduin and Varian Wrynn, is like, all right, we got your back. And then the war chief Thrall of the Horde is like, all right, we got your back. And they unite into what is known as the Might of Kalimdor to face this threat of the Qiraji. And there's also Anachronos, who is still alive. He's Bronze Dragon. I mean, I wouldn't expect him to be dead at this point anyway. It's only been 1,000 years since they did this shit anyway. But he's just like, yeah, guys, we're going to have to go in there and handle Cthulhu, I guess. But at least now we have a much bigger fighting force. You guys still got that Scepter of the Shifting Sands on hand, right? And they're like, ooh. Yeah, we kind of broke it into a ton of pieces. So he's like, well, fuck. I guess you're going to have to go do that. So you unite you go across all of Kalimdor, you gather all these fragments and get these blessings, and if you're cool enough and have a dedicated enough guild, you combine the Scepter of the Shifting Sands and you ring the gong that opens the gates to Ahn'Qiraj.
And you get a sick mount.
And you get a mount that is still impossible to get to this day. I can't believe that they gave that mount an updated model. There's got to be only 100 people that have that mount, and they gave it an extra model. Yeah, I can't. It's not even the same mount that you get. You can have both now. There's just a cool ass looking one. I feel hurt. Okay, I feel hurt.
I bet you can buy the new one too, but
No, they literally only gave it to the people that still had it. So again, I'm like, you guys made this entire model for these people that already had a mount that is impossible to get. Cool. But yeah, basically, just to even break that down for you, if you guys don't play World of Warcraft, there was only a 10-hour period where you could, if you completed the scepter and you rang the gong, you could get this quest chain completed, and it was per server. So basically, if you weren't one of the most dedicated groups on the server to do this, you're not getting the mount. You're not ringing the gong.
I think you got a cool title too.
Scarab Lord.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So the gong rings. The forces of Azeroth are prepared to face the Silithid, and they just kind of come pouring out of this wall, the Scarab Wall, and the Nubasath, those massive Titan Forge that have been corrupted, come pouring out, and it is just an explosive attack between the two armies where they, obviously the loot goblins versus the old gods, a tale as old as time, and they begin to... What is actually interesting, and I never knew this because I'll be honest with you guys, I did not play the original World of Warcraft back in 2004 or 2005, whenever this actually happened. But there is actually these events where during the opening of this gate, that there will be a bunch of these little pillars that pop up across all of the zones in Kalimdor. Not all of them, but a lot of them, and they summon a bunch of Qiraji. So you'll see some in Darkshore, in Tanaris, in Thousand Needles, and Barrens. And it's part of the actual event where you'll go to fight them. And that's kind of also part of the reason why we're like, oh god, they're really coming out of here.
I think I remember in Hardcore, I was doing Hardcore, one of the servers, and stuff like that was happening, and it was super scary.
So that leaves the united forces of Kalimdor, the might of Kalimdor, to go in. And I mean, there's whole long quest chains about you going in and killing millions of fucking bugs, and I honestly do feel like it's millions because there's 3 quests in Silithus alone where they're like, yeah, go get 10 of these items, and it has a -5 drop chance from all of these bugs, and they're just like, yeah, they're elite bugs, go kill them. I mean, I remember even when the first edition of Classic came out, you and me killing bugs for probably 3 hours straight.
Good times. I love killing bugs.
All that for an offhand. I needed my prebis. But yes, so eventually, us being the loot goblins, us being the heroes of the story, we do manage to push these Qiraji back. And then there is the fortress of Ahn'Qiraj, which in the game is split into 2 sections. The ruins of Ahn'Qiraj and the temple of Ahn'Qiraj. And it is stated that in the lore, the Horde are the ones that go into the ruins of Ahn'Qiraj, which I believe is just the 10-man dungeon version, something like that. And they handle all of the Qiraji in there, all the Silithid in there, and they destroy that while the Alliance goes into the Temple of Ahn'Qiraj, and they delve into the deep interior where they find the embodiment of Cthulhu, the old god that is kind of behind all of this. And I mean, just like all the other raids, he had loot. We needed that loot. Fun fact for his fight, he was basically statistically impossible to beat back in the day. I don't know how true that is. I feel like if they were to release a unnerfed Cthulhu fight in modern World of Warcraft, the players are way better equipped and way more knowledgeable to be able to handle it. Yeah. But at the time, there were a bunch of even people that work for Blizzard nowadays being like, this fight's impossible. We're going to leave your game if you keep this shit up.
And it was a 40-man and a 20.
20-man. Okay, yeah. So
25.
So we go in there. We beat the shit out of Cthulhu. He says all his spooky, you will die, your friends will betray you stuff to us. But he doesn't mention that he doesn't have loot. So obviously we go in there, rip all his tentacles off, stab him in his big fat eye, and slay Cthulhu. And with that, I mean, really, you've basically now know all of the major threats, events, and kind of just big bads of what goes on in the first edition of World of Warcraft. We've talked about the Black Dragons, we've talked about the Qiraji, we've talked about Hakar, and now that just kind of leaves the heroes of Azeroth kind of confidently saying that we've won, Azeroth is safe, until the next year in the storyline, where the Dark Portal will once again open to Azeroth thanks to Lord Kha'Zix, and we will make our way into Outland to begin the story of the Burning Crusade.
So what happened to Fandral?
Fandral still exists. He is still the leader of the...
Well, when did he turn fire? He turned into a fire druid.
To be honest with you, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that it's by Cataclysm. I think Malfurion wakes up and he's like, "You buffoon!" And he's like, "Oh yeah, well, I'm gonna go start my own druid circle, and we're gonna be way cooler than your druid circle."
Malfurion knew right away when he woke up.
I don't know if he knew. I actually haven't read the Storm Rage novel that this all comes from, that this like super large event would be, because I have been saving it for when we're actually getting into the Cataclysm stuff, so that it's all fresh in my mind for you guys. But yeah, I'm pretty sure he's gonna wake up, because there is a story where Brawl helps him to come out of the dream, and then I bet he's gonna come out of the dream and be like, "Traitor, get him, secure that man." But we'll see. And there's a lot of shit going on in Cataclysm, so who even knows? But yeah, you guys, if you haven't played the game, now know all the story that you would ever need to know, for the most part, of how Classic World of Warcraft exists and what you are doing in Classic World of Warcraft.
TBC hype. TBC hype.
I believe next episode we're probably going to move into Kael'thas and his full story out in the Outlands. We did, like I said, talk about him during the Blood Elf episode, but now it is time to get into his full depths of his desperation in Outland, and probably we'll talk about the Sunwell raid as well. And that's going to be a good time. I love me some Blood Elves, loves me some Burning Crusade. And if there is anything in specific that you guys want to hear about from the Burning Crusade expansion, let us know. We'll be happy to see if we can't squeeze it into an episode, or even make a full episode out of it. But that is where we are at for now. Did you have any other questions before we end?
No, just about Fandral.
Fucking Fandral, bro.
Hate him.
He's fallen, like, literally, now you know just how much he's fallen upward. Like, what has he accomplished? Why are you here?
He made a Druid of the Flame. That's pretty cool. You can be a fire cat.
That's not a good thing.
I like the fire cat. It looks cool.
I do also love the fire cat. But
see, without Fandral, you wouldn't have the fire cat.
Fine. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. If you made it this far, drop us a like on our socials, give us a sub, whatever you want to do. We really appreciate it. And we will see you guys next episode for the Burning Crusade. Have a good one.
Thank you so much for making it to the end of this episode. Your guys' support truly means the world to us. If you're interested in hearing more, we have our full show on YouTube and Spotify, new episodes dropping every Tuesday. I also want to take this moment to give a special thank you to Fantasy Lo-Fi for providing the music for this episode. You can find them on YouTube at Fantasy Lo-Fi or on Spotify under Bits and Hits. Be sure to show them some love, as their music does truly bring this journey to life. Once again, thank you for joining us on Tides of Lore, and we will see you next week.